I don't think I can beat his energy. I'm not going to even try. But one thing I would like to say is he actually walks the talk because I was an inbound connection to Saurabh, and we've been connected on LinkedIn for a few years. And he reached out to me a few times over the last couple of years, and once when I really needed a problem to be solved. So what he actually spelled out as a methodology, actually I've interacted with him and we've got value that we've co-created, okay? So I run in this growth agency called IncrementumX. It started off as a side project about 6-7 years back. I think this is the problem statement that a lot of entrepreneurs face in the different parts of their journey, right? How do you go to market? And how do you build something which is very sustainable? Because oftentimes you're building with limited resources, constraint on time, capital, all of that. So I like to start off with a quote. It doesn't matter what your probability of failure is. If there's 90% chance of failure, there's a 10% chance of changing the world. And interestingly, I remember about 15 years back, I remember reading a presentation that Kleiner Perkins and Vinod Khosla made to several entrepreneurs, where he said, the biggest reason you should choose us to invest in your company is because we bring a truckload of failures, so you avoid that, right? So, growth, who likes to failure? So you're, again, show of hands. Other guys have never failed in life or have not tried. Anyway, so growth, I firmly believe that growth is mastered with multiple failures. So when people talk about growth mindset, it's actually failure mindset. And the velocity of failures ensures you get over the hill quicker than most people, right? So what is growth? You might have to. So it's a collection of experiments to find a personalized magic formula. So you could be a business, could be a D2C business, enterprise business, SaaS business, but you have to essentially create your own personalized magic formula that comprises of different parts. And that's going to ensure that you're going to be relevant 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So, how many of you are building startups? If it was 15 years back, I would have seen one hand. How many of you are scaling startups? So which is easier, building or scaling? It's a tough question, right? Is it building or scaling? I didn't hear you guys. I think both are equally difficult, but you get to this question after you can get to that question. What are you building? Why are you building what you're building? Once you have clarity of thought on that, then you kind of figure out how do you build product and how do you scale. So what is GTM? People, I'm not kidding. In the last year and a half, maybe for the last 2.5 years, we've seen this whole funding winter. The venture capital industry is kind of dried up in terms of new deals, less capital available for startups, especially in the Series A stage and beyond. The conversations I've had, mostly in Bangalore over the last 18 months, is everybody's finding GTM really, really hard, right? I think it's post-pandemic. A lot of people decided to build because everybody is doing multiple gigs. They're saying, hey, I'm anyway sitting at home, might as well start a side project. And then there was a lot of capital available. But what is GTM? So GTM is the process of taking your product or service to market, and it encompasses all the steps required to reach your customers and achieve your business objectives. So GTM is not one thing. GTM for me is a combination of multiple things, and how you play that, right? So, for the benefit of the session, we will consider only companies who built product, have customers that are near PMF. How many of you know what product market fit is? What about the others? So, product market fit, Chan, do you want to explain what product market fit is? Chan's anyway very experienced.
When your customers actually is not getting more from you. That's what I understand is
Sure. So there are various definitions. What he said is quite relevant. He said when your customers are not getting bored of it and they are actually choosing to pay for you in a willing fashion. So that's product market fit. Or product market fit is when you realize a large cohort of your customers will be absolutely pissed off if you stop selling to them. Imagine if Gmail shuts down tomorrow. You're all going to be like, what the hell? So product market fit is that level when you know that you've got 100,000 customers and 60,000, 70,000 customers are absolutely in love. They're paying for your product. They will not choose an alternative. That means you've hit product market fit. So this is the downside. If you scale or try to scale before you hit product market fit, you're going to crash, you're going to die, you're going to burn money. There is no easy way of saying it, right? Because you can't, a lot of people are talking about the electric scooters in India. I don't want to name any company here, but you need to have product market fit. You need to have organic customer love, organic reference for you to really scale that business. And it can be in any business. It could be in SaaS, enterprise, D2C, hardware, etc., right? Like for example, my friends at Gen Robotics, they built a prototype about 7-8 years back. But I think they reached that level of maturity where they said, hey, this thing works. The government is paying for it. Now I can roll it out in different districts. Simple example. So types of companies, I think I've just covered that. So most of these frameworks are just out of my reading and my experience. So it's feel free to hook me up and I can give you the presentation. But essentially, when you go into a market, there are the three things that I've written down are probably a sub-segment of all the things that you would do when you select a market. And when I talk about market, it could be a domestic market, it could be an international market, it could be sets of markets, right? So you do market research, you select the relevant markets, and I think the really super crazy good entrepreneurs that I have met have deep clarity on customers, their behavior, the real insights about customers. So they've actually put themselves inside their customers, in their hats, and built a product or a service based on that. So that would change in that particular market, so you got to understand that. So there are three types, essentially. The first part is the marketing-led growth. Second is the sales-led growth. And the third is the partnership-led growth. I'm not written it in any order of priority. They could be different based on the business that you select as well. But normally, these are the three levers and the sub-parts of these levers that you will play around with to create that momentum for growth. Is everybody still with me? Give him a mic.
So when you start out, how do you decide whether to go with the marketing-led growth or sales-led growth or the partnership-led growth?
Sure. That's a great question. It depends on the type of business. It depends upon the amount of capital you have. It depends on the playbooks that other people have used. It depends upon how does that market behave as well. So in some cases, you might go very product-led growth, but with relevant marketing nudges. For example, Sean runs an e-com podcast where you push out content and hit it to the right notes where the right influential people share that content, so it's a different strategy. If you're like HubSpot, you might do a lot of inbound content, and once you realize that the market has got enough traction, you would find the resellers who can resell your product, right? So it's multiple levers and multiple factors that you will consider. So there is unfortunately, I tell you, there's no one sort of, this is the way you got to do it and lift and shift it. It doesn't work that way. So even in markets which are close to each other, maybe if I'm expanding a business into Sweden and say Norway, the playbook in Sweden might be completely different from the playbook in Norway. So you have to understand this. So what does that mean? So what that means is, when you sell internationally, you can pick any market in the world, provided it has the right willingness to pay, right customers, etc. It doesn't necessarily have to be only the markets where there are 100,000 Malayalis, for instance, or it's Singapore, or it's Dubai. Dubai, it's got more than 100,000 Malayalis, but anyway, you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, thank you.
Some of these slides have done in the middle of the night, so if there's any errors, apologies. So what's marketing-led growth? I think Saurabh did cover some parts of it, but marketing-led growth is a combination of a lot of things. First is organic, which is anything related to SEO, content, social, email, webinars, all of that. Paid, influencer ads, social ads, features, etc. Real-world marketing and PR. That's part of your marketing-led growth as well. There's event-led growth. I mean, we saw the booths out there, right? People go to events, they exhibit at events, and that's a great place to kind of meet filtered prospects. Then there's obviously the community, which is both online and offline. That leads your growth. This is quite powerful as well. The referral-led marketing, especially when it comes to D2C, Uber, consumer internet, D2C, SaaS, all of those companies use a lot of referral-led marketing. So this is like the stack. I'm not saying you have to do all of this. This is the whole wide world of possibilities and many more. You need to choose what makes sense for your business. You can talk to other people who've done this before and then pick the right stack for you, right? So I've been doing BD and sales for like almost 25 years. What is sales-led growth? So sales-led growth is obviously research and lead gen. There's obviously inside sales. I know a lot of you guys at SaaS will talk about SDR, BDR, enablement, enrichment, all of that is there. There's obviously sales, which is enterprise, mid-market, feet on street, because depending on the type of business, if you're hardware, software, channel partner, it's a different kind of sales motion. Then you've got obviously the local networking chapters, associations, like for example, a Rotary, a BNI, all of those, right? Then obviously cold calling never dies, at least in the emerging markets. And you have the incentive-based reps. So sometimes it helps when you go into a market, you find somebody who understands your industry and your customer segment, but you can't afford that person. But you have, see, end of the day, whether it's marketing or sales, it's a question of having that clarity of thought in articulating value to everybody in the chain. What do you get? Why do you have to do this for your cohort of people that you know? What is the end result for them? How does everybody create a win-win? Right? So you must have seen a lot of channel partner agreements, all of that. So it comes after a lot of thought saying that, hey, when I go into a market first time, I can afford to give 40%, 50%. If you're a SaaS business, probably not in a D2C business, but yeah. And then over a period of time, you've got maturity, you bring that down to maybe 25%. And you have two people to kind of hedge. So all of your sales is not riding on just one channel partner. Any questions so far? Sales-led growth, marketing-led growth? So I personally feel the partnership-led growth is the toughest to crack initially, right? It's toughest to follow up first, but once you get it to work and you're building product, I think it has got amazing compounding like no other channel. So it could be in hardware, it could be in software, it could be in anything. But if you figure out the partnership led growth model, then you get brilliant compounding. So I mentioned this earlier, this display and articulate value for all parties, build trust, show win. So sometimes in partnership-led growth, I mean, maybe it's a wrong example, but maybe I want to sell into enterprises and I want to sell an IoT solution, or I want to sell something which is a new generation AI which rides on sensor data, all of that. SAP is probably a great partner. IBM is a great partner. But the problem is, these organizations are motivated by closing their own sales. The amount of money they make selling your solution is like not even a drop, right? So it's a question of how do you persist, how do you actually bring the right customer to them and say, hey, listen, I've got an opportunity. I'm talking to this CXO, CIO, CTO who wants a solution. And maybe if you come in, there's probably a larger piece of the pie for you. So sometimes when you're selling a large enterprise solution, your customer is your SAP or your IBM. So you do a lot of inside sales there. You know all the stakeholders there that you need to sell into there, who will eventually bring the larger customers to you. Google's an example as well. So for example, if you want to sell into customers where Google Cloud or AWS is a part of, you need to know who are the spokes at a Google or an AWS to sell your solution through to them, right? Yeah, so examples, Microsoft, AWS, Salesforce, HubSpot, Zoho. See, sometimes you have to understand that when you do enterprise sales, you need to have a lot of capital, or you should be able to play that waiting game, because enterprise sales takes a long period of time. When you're playing an SMB SaaS sort of a game, the sales cycle is a lot shorter, which means that you'll be able to bring partners a lot faster, right? Yeah, so I think somebody asked the question, how do you do what and in what order? Because obviously you have a constraint of money, resources, product or service localization, understanding of local unit economics. It's very important to note that word, local unit economics. You might be selling a product here and you might be breaking even, or you might be having a contribution margin 1 and 2 positive, or CM1 negative and CM2 positive. But say you're going to sell the same product in Indonesia or in Dubai. You have to factor in cost of logistics. You have to factor in cost of compliance, of taxes, all of that, right? So it's very important to understand local unit economics. So I think this is, like I started off with, I think the essence is about being experimentative and scaling the experiments that work for you. I mean, you ask any digital marketing person, they'll tell you, hey, there are 4 or 5 channels, and I'll start with 1 or 2. I'll figure out how that works, and then scale the ones that really work, right? So that's the same model of growth. So I think some of the best companies in the world, and I'm not just talking about software, some of the best companies in the world actually have this going for them. They have management, sales, marketing, product, and customer success, all very intertwined, which means that there is shared ownership. Everybody's batting for everybody else. A lot of companies you see that, hey, sales operates in one silo, they go and talk to marketing and say, hey, where's my leads? Where's my marketing qualified leads? So the companies have figured out to, and it's easier for companies when they're at an earlier stage because these teams are very small. But as you grow, as you scale, if you keep that culture of being intertwined in place, you're going to have a lot more success. Yeah, so I've not talked about product-led growth. It works for some type of companies, some markets, because I assume, I'm talking about GTM, I didn't want to talk about product-led growth, but that's probably, yeah, so I talked about Gen Robotics. It was customer win-driven, B2G. We did a growth fest in Bangalore, which is B2C. We did a combination. Saurav helped us with this community as well, but it was a combination of inbound, outbound, referral, all of that, which is to put together a large event of 350, 400 people. Mokabara, how many of you guys have heard about Mokabara, the brand? Yeah, Mokabara is doing exceedingly well. When they started, they were purely on their own site before they came to marketplaces. And after they got traction, they opened a retail store in Indiranagar. So a lot of brands really think how do they want to project themselves and how does it trickle down into overall the growth strategy, right? Yeah, so Mokabara did an interesting collab with Indigo, where you could buy a bag which is indigo color and you get 2 kilos extra. So that's what, when you think about partnerships, I know when you're building a business, it's difficult to think about partnerships from the get-go, but if you've got a stable product and a team, I think you need to deeply think about who knows this market that you're trying to sell into, who can be complementary with what you're doing. And that creates a very good win-win and cuts your sales and marketing dollars. Slack. I mean, Slack started off as something else, but basically it's product-led growth. They were basically measuring usages across the different companies, and they said, hey, we're going to go after this size of companies, these sort of teams, and then it became a referral sort of led growth. And then they said, hey, I'm going to cap it at X thousands of users. After that, the company starts paying. And once you've got more companies paying, then it becomes a larger flywheel, right? And they played that brilliantly. So that's pretty much what I had to cover. I think I'll open up for questions.
Yeah. Sandeep, I know you are an angel investor. You also work with a lot of startups. You talked about GTM and then product market fit. Do you have a significant way of understanding how you can track certain milestones between product GTM and then you figure out that you have a market fit? Is there something which you usually look at as indicators?
Sure. I don't think I'm smart enough to do that across companies, but I really get involved when there is a decent MVP in place with some traction of customers. It doesn't have to be revenue, but I know for a fact if it's a D2C brand, they've got free trials. If it is a SaaS company, they've got people using the product, but the first 3 months, 6 months, deferred payments. So I don't typically get into that formulation of the market gap with the product sort of space. I don't think I'm the best person to do that, frankly. But I try to understand where, once they have a little bit of traction, sometimes when it's a little early, what I do is I just make 3 or 4 incredibly smart friends talk to the founder. And why they're building. And what do they plan to do? And then I get that feedback from the 3 or 4 people. And then I say, okay, I think this guy has a shot. I don't think this guy has a shot. Right? I'm very brutal. And I'm brutal in the sense that I stay behind the experts when I tell them that this will work, this will not work. Once the guy or the team has a little bit more momentum in terms of customers, revenue, that's when I get really interested. So then it is like, okay, how do you scale on certain parameters, but at the same point, how do you ensure that the product doesn't break when you scale on those parameters? So what might work for 5 customers might not work for 30 customers. But then that's where I come in. We're like, okay, if you're going to scale from 5 to 30, we need X dollars in the bank. So do we have a shot? So then again, I have to work my phones or figure out, make them go talk to people, etc., etc. So I would say that the value that the growth agency business brings in is from a seed to Series B. I get interested slightly pre-seed as well. And pre-Series A is where I stop, because I think they would have cracked most of what they want to crack. By the time they're pre-Series A, they would have raised a couple of $1 million. Then it's optimization or international growth if it is a SaaS or an enterprise business, pretty much. If it's a D2C business, it's more partnerships and design and all of that kind of stuff. I don't know whether I really answered your question, but yeah, it's for me, it is seed, post-seed, when you have product, when you have traction, when you've got prospective customers, then getting that engine revving from there is a lot easier.